Getting a trading platform 3,000 years later, everything in this world has become an antique, worth 1,000 gold. But it is also known that 3 years later, aliens invaded and humans fell, and the dark era of the starry sky began. In this era that has never undergone such great changes for tens of thousands of years, Shen Shi decided. First, trade a spaceship and wait for the surprise before proceeding. So. Warships have descended from outer space. Global terror. Starry Sky Era, open early. Keywords of the novel: no pop-up window for opening trading of cosmic warships, complete download of TXT for opening trading of cosmic warships, latest chapters for opening trading of cosmic warships. Chapter 1, The Dark Era of Starry Sky. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1, The Dark Era of Starry Sky. This is a 15 square meter apartment building room. Ordinary. But at this moment, it is full of brilliant brilliance. Shen Shi sat dumbfounded on the bed, watching the projection that surrounded him. It was a huge city ruins, with raging flames burning in front of him. The rolling black smoke almost covered the sky, and attacks that could not be seen by the naked eye emerged densely from all directions, bringing endless explosions and expanding flames. Countless crying humans struggled to flee everywhere, but there was nowhere to escape. Shen Shi even saw a girl wearing an exquisite princess dress, wrapped in flames in mid-air, rolling and shouting, and falling heavily in front of him. The mixture of burnt black and bright red meat foam made him tremble all over. This is a grand hell. It is the end of humanity. The ultimate audiovisual visuals brought unimaginable emotions, constantly impacting every nerve of Shen Shi. If it weren't for the soft touch of the mattress and silk quilt still emanating from beneath him, he might have already roared and fled. Suddenly, an unknown roar shattered a large expanse of black smoke, accompanied by countless flying wreckage. Shen Shi finally saw the sky behind the black smoke. I also saw the enemy that created all of this. Shocking, sweeping everything in an instant. Warships. That is a huge shadow shrouded above the city, not a weapon originating from humans. The ferocious shell and wriggling flesh are tightly intertwined, and every detail showcases a reality that special effects cannot reach, bringing indescribable trembling. Almost as Shen Shi's emotions were about to reach their limits, everything paused. The blazing flames, the rolling up debris, and even the screams of fleeing humans, all stopped changing. Only huge texts remain, constantly appearing in the center of the line of sight. Dongwu language, Shiman language, Nia language. All imaginable human characters are within it. Shen Shi instinctively found the one he could understand. On June 18, 2026, human history changed accordingly. The Earth Age has come to an end, and the Dark Sky Age begins with a full-scale invasion war. On June 25, the Earth Federation Command, representing 198 countries around the world, declared surrender. 800 million humans lost their lives in this week. Those who survived also lost everything, including dignity, freedom, hope, culture, and history. We didn't do anything wrong, the only mistake was being too weak. With this image, remember the beginning of the Starry Sky Era. Produced on January 1, 3026 in the Starry Sky Era. With the appearance of the final handwriting, the illusion that was originally shrouded around began to surge towards the center like a receding tide, and finally returned to a floating white ball with a diameter of only about 5 centimeters. If some people outside see this scene, they will definitely fall into indescribable madness. The kind of immersive projection that transforms the entire room into a virtual world is actually just released by such an inconspicuous and portable small ball. If this technology can be popularized, it can completely change the human image industry, and even the gaming industry. However, the only person who knows all of this clearly doesn't have the mood to care about it at this moment. Shen Shi is still sitting in bed at this moment. Everything around him that had been restored and familiar gradually calmed his emotions. It's like watching an extremely exciting blockbuster in a cinema, and emotions are stirred up accordingly, but when the movie ends and leaves the cinema, they also leave the world in the movie. This is not something that so-called movies can compare to. Because Shen Shi knew very well where the small ball in front of him, which was still suspended and contained a technological level that humans could never understand at this time, came from. That is the future in 3,000 years. He lifted his right hand, his mind twitching slightly. The diamond-shaped skin above the back of his hand began to emit a faint starlight, which became clearer and clearer. In the end, he could no longer see the original skin, but instead became like a black hole, incredibly deep, as if it had become the entrance to another starry sky, adorned with countless stars. How did this thing actually come to me? Shen Shi muttered to himself. When he first discovered this change, he was excited for a long time, especially when he realized that there was also a black market trading terminal connected to human civilization 3,000 years later that bound him together with this thing. The various plots of black technology articles, academic powerhouse articles, and future technology articles that I have watched before fill my mind. That's definitely not a false YY for him. The virtual reality projection ball in front of us is proof. Anything obtained from 3,000 years later is enough to completely change this era. As long as it operates well, being careful at the beginning and being meticulous is enough to help him conquer this era and create a future that no one can imagine. Rights, status, wealth, health, beauty. Everything is within reach. But that kind of expectation, just a few minutes ago, accompanied by what was recorded in the projection ball, was hit hard. It is now May 2023. If this projection ball really comes from the future 3,000 years later, it means that everything that was just presented to him will happen 3 years later. Human beings will be invaded by extraterrestrial forces and surrender within a short week, entering the dark era of the starry sky. Even if he could survive the brutal war of that week, he would lose everything. No way. Shen Shi gritted his teeth, his gaze revealing fear. We must find a way to escape this future. Although possibilities such as parallel spacetime theory also exist, he dare not gamble. And he has an inexplicable intuition that seems to come from the Milky Way in the back of his hand. That's the future of this world. At this moment, Shen Shi had completely abandoned his original wealth plan. Survival is the top priority. After forcing himself to calm down, Shen Shi looked back at the back of his hand. He has a clear understanding of his abilities. I am just an ordinary person who has put in hard work to attend a good university, with some small abilities and also a bit selfish. There is not much difference between me and the people I saw crying and fleeing in the video just now. However, with this thing in hand, the fundamental differences have emerged. This thing appeared in this era and in me, perhaps to convey some mission, or to have some expectations for me that cannot be achieved. Shen Shi looked at the starry sky that appeared on the back of her hand, her bright eyes now somewhat uncertain. Finally, as if she had made up her mind, she said in her heart, "That may disappoint me. Let me and the people I care about live on, which is the most important thing for me." End of this chapter. Chapter 2, Searching for High-Value Items. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2, Searching for High-Value Items. Shen Shi still has a strong sense of action. Otherwise, there is no way to be admitted to such a 985 prestigious school from a small county town. Moreover, during my time in school, I completely relied on myself and gradually started my own small business, opening a relatively small script killing studio. In recent years, it has been a time of the rise of script killing, and there are particularly many script killing halls around the university city. Shen Shi's family, with their dedicated interpersonal relationships, exquisite decoration, and heavily invested promotional costs in the school, has also gained a good reputation nearby, and business has always been good. Originally, Shen Shi was planning to truly manage this store as a career in his life after graduation. But now, this plan has clearly been broken. At this moment, he put away the projection ball, forced himself to remain calm, and then sat at the desk, picking up a blank A4 paper. Known 1. Shen Shi picked up his pen and wrote. I named it the Time Diamond, abbreviated as the Seal of the Time Diamond, which has the power to connect the present and the future 3003 years from now. Known as 2, it seems that in order to save energy, items from the present are transmitted to the future, which will experience 3000 years of time passing in an unknown space. The evidence is that the jade pendant from the last transaction was detected as an antique. Shen Shi had previously conducted a transaction with a future person who claimed to be an antique collector through a black market trading terminal. The Guanyin jade pendant he bought for over 1,000 yuan was exchanged for the projection that records this part of history. As for the reason for the exchange, it was only affordable. Known 3, jade is not worth money in the future. Shen Shi will write down these 3 known situations. This is a habit he developed while thinking. In the process of writing slowly, inspiration often bursts out. At this moment, looking at the 3 known items listed above, I hesitated for a moment before continuing to write. Speculation 1. All materials and substances in the present world have little value in the future. This is based on the collector's reaction and normal logic when facing the jade pendant. If it weren't for the statue of Guanyin on top, even if the other party could confirm that the jade pendant came from 300 years ago, they wouldn't have traded it at all. In the universe, the least lacking are various materials, even from 3000 years ago. Speculation 2. Shen Shi continued to write, antiques have a certain value in the future. This is also easy to speculate about. If there is no value, how can there be an antique collection? At this point, Shen Shi stopped. In the future black market, there will be more than just antique collectors. The problem is that with the conditions in Shen Shi's hands, antiques are undoubtedly the easiest to achieve. This is the advantage brought by Shirling and must be made good use of. So, the problem now is very obvious. If jade pendants have no value, then it is necessary to find valuable antiques. After thinking for a while, Shen Shi continued to write, argument, the value of modern antiques originates from 3 places, rarity, historical value, and artistic value. Rare things are precious, which goes without saying, and should also be the same in the future. Therefore, the rarity of materials themselves is basically not something to think about. There are now, and there will definitely be in the future. Even precious metals such as gold may not be valuable in the future. Therefore, Shen Shi drew a heavy circle around the words history and art. After some thought, in history, draw another circle. The collector he saw looked a bit indescribable, so it's hard to say how modern people's artistic aesthetics will be perceived by future generations. So, only history remains. Shen Shi stared closely at these 2 words, his eyes becoming increasingly bright. Every antique is a witness to the politics, economy, and culture of a specific period in history, a carrier of comprehensive historical information, and at the same time, a non-renewable and non-recreatable item, reflecting the sense of vicissitudes and rare characteristics of historical burden. This may be the greatest value of antiques in the future. As long as human civilization can continue, exploring the history of its own civilization should become a pursuit for future generations. Shen Shi muttered to himself and finally stood up suddenly, ran to his room and took out a pile of paper. These are all backup scripts from his store. After thinking for a moment, I took out another USB drive and copied some things from my computer. If his pushing is correct, these things may be more valuable than his jade pendant. So now, it's time to try trading. The back of Shen Shi's hand once again revealed a brilliant Milky Way, and in the next moment, a cold feeling surged into his mind. Writings appeared before my eyes. Whether to log into the trading market? Yes. Shen Shi had already experienced it once, so he was very proficient. Please select the items you need to carry. With the appearance of the next choice, everything in the room before me was covered by light blue markers. I directly selected the stack of scripts to kill backups, as well as the USB drive. Dear valued member, welcome to log in. With this last line of words, Shen Yi's thinking seemed to split into two parts at once, one still sitting on a chair, and the other coming to another place. That is an antique street. Yes, it has an antique flavor. Looking around, the sun is bright, the sky is blue, and the line of sight is open. On both sides are various styles of buildings, some of which have the traditional style of Eastern beauty. Whether it is wooden eaves, carved windows with patterns, or golden glazed roofs, they all show the Eastern characteristics. Although the small courtyard and royal glass mixed together are full of incompatibility. And those buildings that display Western characteristics are even more exaggerated. Although it is in the style of ancient Greek temples and uses building colors and materials, it is similar to ancient Egyptian grottos and tombs. Is there a sign full of Cantonese style hanging on a doorpost resembling a statue of David? Is the main body of Gothic Revival architecture complemented by a classical architectural dome? This is a complete mixture of different periods, regions, and materials. However, compared to the strange feeling he had when he first came here, this time Shen Shi saw some uplifting information from these various buildings. That is the pursuit of history and culture. And the lack of historical and cultural significance. Yes, these buildings do seem unconventional and full of future people's fantasies about ancient architecture. However, in this virtual trading market, this style of architecture is everywhere, and it is obvious that it is a certain trend. Does this trend reflect the pursuit of history by future people? Shen Shi became increasingly confident in his upcoming transactions. End of this chapter. Chapter 3, Expensive Ancient Books. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3, Expensive Ancient Books. At this moment, he is actually not what he was originally. But it was filled with 7 colors of flowing light. Not to mention the appearance, even the body shape cannot be roughly determined. Looking around, most of the people walking up and down the street look like this. This kind of anonymous effect is a built-in feature of this terminal. After all, it is a black market. Although Shen Yi intends to explore these shops around him, the most important thing now is to determine the value of antiques. He immersed himself as much as possible in every colorful figure around him, even maintaining a similar rating in his footsteps, and slowly arrived at a corner of the street where there was a shop that he saw as different from other buildings. The reason is very simple. From a modern perspective, there is no problem with the decoration of this store. The exterior walls are built with blue stone bricks, brown wooden plaques, and a bell hangs inside the main entrance. Pushing the door in will make a crisp sound. Whether it is rows of wooden frames placed against the wall or counters that block guests on the side, they all appear very natural, no different from modern antique shops. That's why Shen Shi noticed this last time. Once born and then ripe, he pushed the door open and walked in. At first glance, he saw a colorful figure in front of the counter, as well as a collector sitting behind the counter. Do you have any other guests? Shen Shi swept over the collector and walked calmly. Welcome. The collector's eyes, shining softly, looked over and spoke a language that Shen Shi couldn't understand, but a simultaneous translation came to his ear. It's me. Shen Shi's voice was slightly dull after being modified by the terminal, and he couldn't hear any emotional voice. But it made the azure light in the eyes of collectors shine a little brighter. It turned out to be a distinguished guest. The collector even put down the guest in front of him and walked towards Shen Shi. There was no anonymous rainbow flowing light on his body, nor any clothing. It was a body that mixed art and technology. On the white jade-like crystal-clear main trunk, various patterns were woven with golden patterns, and even the internal structure was faintly visible. Every move had a blue flowing light surging through his body, bringing him a certain mysterious color. The 3 words robot cannot describe this body at all. Shen Shi is also uncertain whether this is his true appearance or the virtual image created in this trading market. Anyway, his terminal does not have the function of creating this image. But this is not important. Shen Shi watched the collector walk up to him without saying a word, playing the role of a silent character. What is the purpose of your visit to our store this time? The voice of the collector cannot distinguish between male and female, and tends to be neutral because he cannot understand the language he uses and cannot figure out the tone. However, just as Shen Shi was pondering how to speak, a guest with a hidden figure on the other side suddenly interjected. Wait, I haven't finished the transaction yet. This is also an incomprehensible language, but it seems different from what the collector uses. Guest. The collector looked at the guest and said, I can't accept the items you took out. The rules in this place are very strange. There is no currency, but exchange for things, which seems particularly inconvenient. But perhaps there are other reasons that Shen Shi is not clear about. At this moment, another guest came over to interject, and Shen Shi didn't care either. In such a place beyond his worldview, he adhered to the principle of speaking too much, losing too much. At this moment, his gaze was only on another thing originally placed on the counter. It should be the item that another guest wants to trade. I just don't know if it's a receipt or a delivery. However, in the moment of seeing that thing clearly, Shen Shi's pupils slightly contracted. If it weren't for the cover of colorful flowing light, it would definitely have been discovered. But no wonder he is, because it is truly a book. A damaged, withered yellow book that seemed to have been burned away, but on the remaining cover, there were clearly two words. Sun Tzu. It's obvious Chinese characters, this is a book from my own era. Grandchild, what? Combined with the rest, Shen Shi had already guessed that it should be Sun Tzu's Art of War. His heart was pounding, but he didn't say a word because he realized it was a great opportunity to see if the books of his time were being valued and what value they had here. If these two people start bargaining, that would be even better. While listening, he continued to focus on the book with a seemingly interested expression. The customer, who also concealed his appearance, didn't care and continued, this is the latest product of Adelaide civilization. You should know its best-selling level, and when you trade currency outside, the price must be above your book. Shen Shi's gaze was also drawn to another object that appeared next to the guest's hand. That is a suspended black liquid. It looks like half a person is big and constantly surging, as if it has life. The situation is very obvious, this should be the item that the guest took out and wants to trade this book. But what exactly is this? When Shen Shi thought this way, the collector still refused to trade. If you can buy it outside, then just go ahead and buy it. You should understand the rules here. I don't need this kind of simulated deformable material, so its value needs to be greatly reduced. Besides, I'm not an antique dealer, I'm a collector. If the last sentence was translated accurately, Shen Shi would also understand it. Antique dealers are for making money, but collectors are only for collecting. The price may be attractive enough, but at least not when there is no shortage of money, because selling one's collection at a slightly higher price. It seems that the collector's attitude was firm. After a moment of silence, the customer asked syllable by syllable, I only use this transaction. How much do you need? 10 times. The collector's lips, woven with gold thread, slightly parted. Impossible. The guest's tone also changed, but just this translation, Shen Shi seemed to be able to see his determination. This is the bottom line. The collector didn't say much, but once again turned his gaze to Shen Shi. And this distinguished guest, what do you want to trade this time? Shen Shi did not respond. He is just pondering. In my own room, it seems that there is also a book about Sun Tzu's Art of War. You don't need to think too long to make a decision. For him now, finding ways to learn more information and maximize his own interests is the most important thing. Otherwise, even if he holds a golden mountain, he may not be able to sell it at a good price. End of this chapter. Chapter 4, Universal Deformable Substances. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4 Universal Deformable Substances. So, facing the collector's inquiry, Shen Shi slowly said, "Ancient books." Just 2 words, the scene suddenly fell into silence. Not only the collector, but also another customer who had hidden their figure also looked over. "This is really a coincidence," the collector laughed. "Although they are like golden lips, when they smile, they are exceptionally soft." "What are they all?" the guest had already asked first. "Sun Tzu's Art of War." Shen Shi looked at him. In an instant, silence reappeared. Although he couldn't see his expression or hear his tone, Shen Shi seemed to feel his urgency. "I had originally planned to throw it out, but now that I have made a decision, there is no need to hesitate anymore." "How many words are there annotations?" the guest asked again. "Annotations?" Shen Shi hesitated slightly. Glancing over the broken book of Sun Tzu's Art of War on the table, it seemed that I understood. What is truly valuable is not the original text of Sun Tzu's Art of War. After all, this is a famous article, and even in modern society, there are countless versions. Therefore, no matter how many ancient books are missing, the original text should not be missing, but annotations are likely to be the only one. "Wait a moment," Shen Shi simply said, his figure beginning to become illusory. Half offline mode. At this point, the main consciousness has returned to reality. I walked directly to the study and picked up the book on Sun Tzu's Art of War. Haicheng Federation of Literary and Art Circles Publishing House, hardcover edition, hardcover, with a total of 312 pages and a thickness no less than a novel of over 100,000 words. Compared to the incomplete book I just saw, it is even stronger by countless times. When I returned to the collector's shop again, the book had already appeared in my hand. However, at this moment, the books have become withered, yellow, dry, and fragile, with pages sticking together as if they would split apart in an instant just by flipping. 3,000 years of time have been added to this book. Even so, the guests were still excited, and even the collector's gaze was firmly fixed on this book. Surprisingly preserved so completely. Even if you don't understand the language, you can feel the incredible shock in the tone of the collector's voice even when translated. He gently lifted his white jade finger, and the book in Shen Shi's hand suddenly flew up, spreading out page by page in mid-air. The originally fragile pages seemed to be delicately protected, clearly divided, and even the slightest cracks were clearly visible, without any influence on each other. However, the handwriting on it was as if it had been mosaic painted, making it impossible to read clearly. After all, what appears here is not a real book at all, but rather a virtual version of the book. The mosaic on the handwriting is only a protection of ownership. Shen Shi didn't speak, he was also somewhat amazed by the scene, but still remembered to maintain his silent persona. After a long time, the collector still hasn't retracted his amazed and intoxicated gaze. "It's been a long time since I've seen such a perfect ancient book." His fingers slowly scanned the floating pages of the book, seemingly feeling the rough texture. "Preserved in a vacuum environment, there's nothing missing. I should have only experienced one owner, but unfortunately its owner didn't flip much. Sir, please make sure to sell this human treasure to me. I will definitely give you a satisfactory deal." The azure light in the eyes of collectors suddenly became scorching. The excitement in the tone was even more undisguised. "This is actually a very irrational behavior in trading. Shen Shi is not compatible. People 3,000 years later may not be able to control their emotions, but he still behaves like this. This is enough to demonstrate the value of this book." "Guess it right." Shen Shi's heart was equally overjoyed. This means that he, who is in the past, has a true treasure. "Thank you for the anonymous mode." Shen Shi's emotions have not been leaked at all. After a moment of silence, he suppressed his emotions and then looked at the guest just now. "Show me your trade item. Please." Due to anonymity, Shen Shi was unclear about the expression of the other guest. But the rolling liquid had already flown over. Introducing sound simultaneously. The simulated deformable material produced by the Adelaide civilization is specifically designed to integrate into other civilizations. It can simulate any carbon-based organism, with the smallest unit accurate to the ancestor cell. It also has strong simulation ability for material deconstruction and is equipped with the strongest anti-reconnaissance system, with extremely high military value. Shen Shi looked at the liquid in his hand and listened to a continuous stream of simultaneous translations in his ear. Even if one cannot hear the original tone under the influence of anonymity, one can feel the urgency in the other person's heart from this lengthy introduction. Anonymity is indeed not omnipotent. You did the right thing by speaking less. But compared to these, Shen Shi at this time was even more amazed by the things in his hand. He has temporarily obtained permission for this item from the trading platform and knows its true usage. Deformation. The so-called simulated deformable material is composed of an incredibly small individual that can be transformed into most elements. Attention, it's an element. Hydrogen, helium, lithium, beryllium, boron is an element. From a modern scientific perspective, this is almost impossible. The so-called elements are the fundamental particles that make up matter, and are the result of a quantitative change in the number of protons in an atom that leads to a qualitative change. In other words, if this substance really exists, its control level would at least be protons. Can there be changes in protons without changes in energy? Forget it. Shen Shi gave up using his poor scientific literacy to contemplate technology 3,000 years later. Suppressing his excitement, he followed the instructions in the manual and with just a thought, the pitch-black liquid in his hand suddenly compressed into a square piece of gold. Whether it's weight or texture, it's no different from real gold. Then there is another move. Transformed into an indescribable bird with constantly changing wings, beautiful and beautiful, spreading its wings, it flew freely around Shen Shi in this small room. This is an extraterrestrial creature recorded in a simulated deformable material database. Metamorphic substances can transform and simulate into the vast majority of elements, but the combination between them requires control terminals for control, just like the relationship between a remote control and a drone. Not bad, Shen Shi said calmly. That's the deal. The customer's eagerness couldn't even suppress anonymity. This is a complete version of Sun Tzu's Art of War. Even if it's not a standalone version, just being complete can make its value more than 10 times more than slightly lacking. If you give this treasure to the Lord, make sure to trade it over. The customer even looked at the collector with alertness. In the previous moment, they were trading partners, in this moment, they are enemies. End of this chapter. Chapter 5, A Space Warship. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5, A Space Warship. If your esteemed guest likes this deformable substance, I can't help but take it out, the collector spoke at this moment, even as he spoke, his gaze fixed on the pages of the book. There was no anonymous him, and the confidence in his tone was almost overflowing. 10 tons, said another guest slowly. Suddenly, the collector's movements froze. Shen Shi's eyes lit up. 10 tons of simulated deformable material. This type of simulated deformable material can transform into various elements, even living beings can simulate it, comparable to the 72 transformations in mythological legends. However, one thing cannot be changed. Quality. In other words, 1 kilogram of simulated deformable material cannot transform into 2 kilograms of gold. If it were only 1 kilogram, Shen Shi might only be able to transform into a handgun or something. But 10 tons? From tanks, airplanes, to lion packs, elephants. Even extraterrestrial beings exist. Items from 3,000 years later, when brought to modern society, are no less magical and powerful than myths. Take whatever you want, not to mention the low-level desire to get rich, ruling the world is possible. However, Shen Shi suddenly remembered the scene of the extraterrestrial war 3 years later, like a basin of cold water pouring down from the beginning, and his restless heart suddenly became cold. how can one rule the world? There are only 3 years left for the good days of humanity. As for defeating the invaders. Thinking about the warship that covered the sky, Shen Shi's heart became even colder. 11 tons. The collector's voice pulled Shen Shi back from his trance. The bidding has started. The collector's face no longer had a smile, and the light within the collective kept surging, seemingly revealing a sense of mystery. But the other guest didn't hesitate. 12 tons. Although collectors have a special status, even collectors cannot cross the platform and know their true identity. 13 tons. 14 tons. Since it is a trading simulation of deformable materials, this customer is determined to win. A while ago, AMP-3 merchant ship from the Adelaide civilization was plundered by interstellar pirates, carrying 25 tons of the latest simulated deformable material. The collector stared closely at another customer, his mouth slightly curved. I'm offering 24 tons. If you continue to add, then I'll give up. Shen Shi's heartbeat slightly accelerated. Interstellar pirates. The world in 3,000 years may be even more complex than I imagined. However, compared to this point, the number of 24 tons is the main reason for his heart's further beating. No matter what the world will be like 3,000 years later, these people cannot go back to find him 3,000 years ago. He is just a ruthless antique dealer, the rest of the matter has nothing to do with him. After a long silence. At the moment when Shen Shi felt nervous. 25 tons. The simultaneous translation of these words appeared in his ear. Congratulations, the collector seemed to sigh, and the curve of his mouth also narrowed. You don't have 24 tons at all. The anger in the words of another guest can be felt even in anonymous mode of translation. If you want to grab something from me, you always have to pay a price, customer, said the collector calmly. My gaze turned once again towards the pages of the book, my fingers fondling them with reluctance. It seems that even if he cheats his competitors, he doesn't have much pleasure. This is a person who truly loves antiques. Shen Shi confirmed this in his mind. Even if it is installed, being able to install it to this extent means that it will not be easily changed. Sir, another guest turned to Shen Shi, may I ask if the transaction is possible? Shen Shi couldn't understand what he was saying, but from the translation, he could already feel the other party's respect in language. This is the seller's market. Sure, he said briefly. 25 tons. According to an adult male weighing 63 kilograms, 25 tons is enough to transform into 400 humans. Moreover, the value of this deformable material goes far beyond its transformation into living organisms and elements. Shen Shi is at least a student of a prestigious university, so he is not foolish. What does it mean to be a substance that can be transformed into any element? It means, universal experimental instrument. If Edison had this thing back then, when he invented the light bulb, he wouldn't have used more than 7,000 experiments. Undoubtedly, future creations, even if they are just auxiliary, are capable of changing the process of human technological development. Unfortunately, Shen Shi's excitement was once again suppressed as he thought of an alien invasion. However, it is not without benefits. With this matter in mind, there is no need to worry about an imbalance in mentality after getting rich, because even if you want to float, you cannot float. Shen Shi indulged in hardship. The transaction process went smoothly, and everything was handed over to the platform. This black market trading terminal that accompanied Shirling is also a very magical treasure. Each terminal seems to have an independent and huge space attached, and all trading items are directly conducted in the space. Even scanning and projecting trading items into the virtual shopping street is done through this independent space. 3,000 years later, technology is no less than mythology. In short, a large pile of suspended and wriggling black liquid appeared in Shen Shi's space. And the guest, after befriending Shen Shi, hurriedly left. Although he traded what he wanted, the price he paid was also somewhat heavy. Is there anything else for your esteemed guest? The collector looked at Shen Shi with a friendly tone. Shen Shi didn't know if there was any mention of favoritism 3,000 years later, but in his opinion, the recent transaction was actually due to the collector's favor. Without him, Sun Tzu's Art of War could not have been traded at such a high price. Yes, he has guessed the approximate price. The first price quoted by another customer in front of the collector, 10 tons, is probably the appropriate price, even slightly higher. Having a reference point undoubtedly has greater benefits for Shen Shi's subsequent transactions. So he said directly, I want a spaceship that can survive in the universe for a long time. Yes, a spaceship. This is what Shen Shi truly wants and must have. If an alien invasion is inevitable in 3 years, then there are only 2 options left, to defeat the invaders and escape from the Blue Star. Obviously, Shen Shi has no confidence in the former, while the latter prioritizes safeguarding his own and his family's lives. He is ready to escape. This is the decision made after watching that post-apocalyptic video. Regardless of whether it is possible to change history or the future of humanity, the path of retreat is the primary guarantee. End of this chapter. Chapter 6, Ancient Information Carriers. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6, Ancient Information Carriers. Big Business. The collector's golden lips slowly rose, with an amplitude that was completely incomparable to before, just like a clown's smile, filled with inexplicable emotions. He lifted his white jade-like fingers and gently touched them. A black object appeared in front of Shen Shi. This is the best warship I have. If your esteemed guest has the ability, just take it. Shen Shi saw an unprecedented heat in the depths of those eyes, which were shining with azure light. I'm careless. Shen Shi knew that he was still eager. This kind of barter transaction has no specific price, and the demand occupies a large value. He first says what he wants, but in fact, he loses some initiative. Just like the customer just now, they had to make the transaction at a higher cost. However, warships are the most important. Shen Shi's attention was completely drawn to the spaceship in front of him. The appearance of this spaceship is somewhat different from the imagined spaceship in movies, as it is not flat or elongated, but rather spherical. Yes, it's the image of a round ball. On the surface, the whole body is black, and most of the area is exceptionally smooth. The rough material cannot be seen, with only a few areas slightly protruding, and the corresponding information has been inputted into his mind through the platform. With a diameter of 1.365 kilometers, equipped with an ecological cycle system and equipped with **** model intelligent central control system. Equipped with *** type annihilation reactor. Equipped with a curvature-driven engine, with a power level of ***58/4. Equipped with a maintenance system, the maximum maintenance loss ratio is 32.486745%. Equipped with a level 3 energy chamber. Equipped with stealth system. The main weapon is the Starkiller plasma cannon. Sub-weapons include **** pulse shooting, gamma laser launcher, cannon. The long section afterwards is filled with a large number of equipment and performance parameters. When it comes to weapons alone, there are 4 to 5 pages, and each single item has a huge amount of space, with a large number of asterisk characters. According to the translation system of the platform, the asterisk symbol means that it cannot be translated in the commonly used language. In summary, Shen Shi gave up seeing from this explanation the quality of this immigrant-used space warship. After all, even buying a computer requires mastering the corresponding knowledge to determine its quality, let alone a spaceship. He simply focused his attention on the warship itself. With just a thought, Shen Shi, who had already gained control of the projection, easily enlarged the projection of the warship in front of him. And this store, which was originally only of ordinary size, has also been continuously expanding. It wasn't until a truly massive spaceship appeared in front of him that Shen Shi could truly feel this shock. This is a round ball with a diameter of 1,300 meters. The surface area is over 6 million square meters. Equivalent to an area of about 1,000 football fields. The world's largest aircraft carrier, with a length of only over 300 meters. Shen Shi has watched the country's aircraft carrier from afar, and still remembers the shock that humans brought when facing movable giants. However, compared to the space warship in front of him, that aircraft carrier is so small. If this spaceship is brought to the Blue Star, it will immediately become the largest means of transportation on the Blue Star. No one. Not to mention, this is a spaceship. Thinking that this spaceship might belong to him, Shen Shi felt an indescribable excitement. He, like most men, likes big and domineering things. The space battleship that almost covered the entire sky that suddenly appeared in the image came to mind, and Shen Shi's originally excited heart cooled down once again. From a modern perspective, this spaceship is powerful enough. But from a future and interstellar perspective? Shen Shi doesn't know. He only knew that if he wanted to escape, the spaceship in front of him could only take away tens of thousands of people at most. Not enough. He looked at the collector. Is there anything better? If an alien invader arrives as scheduled, this spaceship will become his and his family's last home, their greatest reliance in the vast universe. However, no matter how powerful it is not enough for his needs. Unless it's strong enough to defeat the invaders. Dear valued guest, the collector's tone, translated with obvious regret, this was originally a warship I prepared for myself. I can assure you that you cannot obtain a better immigrant warship here. You should know that we humans are not qualified to build immigrant warships above the **** type. The last sentence stunned Shen Shi. No qualifications, no abilities. Speaking of it. What is the situation for humanity in the interstellar society 3,000 years later, after suffering a disastrous defeat and losing everything just to make a living? If only I knew history. Shen Shi once again realized his mistake, and the immense sense of crisis drove his strong desire for space warships. However, in reality, he should have more information about the future before trading warships. This greatly reduces the possibility of exposure and allows him to obtain stronger warships as much as possible. After all, he is just an ordinary college student, how can he be so calm and wise? Shen Shi made a self-deprecating remark in his heart. However, a decision has also been made. Anyway, a spaceship is a must-have. Not to mention the seemingly decent immigrant warship in front of us, even if it's just a small one, as long as we can escape from the Blue Star, we must have it. As for more powerful warships, whenever possible, there are plenty of opportunities. The time diamond and the value of antiques in the future are his confidence. Since that's the case, then let's take this one, he said softly, hesitating for a moment before throwing out a USB flash drive. Yes, it's a USB drive that he copied some things from his computer before coming. 3,000 years of time have been applied to this USB drive, but it is located in an inert environment for 3,000 years, so there is no rust, no corrosion, only slight deformation, which is an indelible mark over a long period of time. But just as the projection of this USB flash drive appeared, the entire head of the collector is shrouded in a rich halo. His eyes were no longer just shining, but also tumbling violently, filled with intense emotions that even Shen Shi could easily see. Is this the ancient information storage carrier of the Earth Age? His voice became very light, and the translated words even had a slight tremble. Shen Shi didn't expect that if he just took out a USB drive, the other party's reaction would be so exaggerated. End of this chapter. Chapter 7, No Malicious Power Attacks. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7, No Malicious Power Attacks. But the excited collector no longer cared about him. It's like forgetting the existence of Shen Shi, even forgetting that the USB flash drive in front of us is just a projection. The collector, with his crystal-clear hands, carefully holds this steel-silver USB flash drive and murmurs to himself, "Walker tampers with our language, destroys our memories, destroys all information carriers, they want to enslave us forever, so that we can never find our past, origin, and self, and never have the qualification to touch the realm of the strong." Shen Shi listened to the translation and his pupils slightly narrowed. He finally understood. Why does modern text and information have such great value in the future, and why is history and culture so severely lacking? The invaders 3 years later intentionally destroyed all of this. However, Shen Shi is somewhat difficult to understand. If it is from the perspective of governance and slavery, destroying the beliefs and culture of prisoners can be considered a powerful means, but why is it that without these, one is never qualified to touch the territory of the strong? Without the inheritance and culture of the past, wouldn't we create a new culture? Shen Shi lowered his gaze and remained silent. Whether it is the future 3,000 years later or the mysterious starry sky, there are too many unknown and difficult to understand secrets for him at this moment. But now, it's not the time to pursue these secrets. At this point, collectors have already begun to analyze the contents of the USB drive. If it were a modern computer, this USB drive that has been stored for 3,000 years would obviously be scrapped. However, with the powerful parsing ability of the black market platform, all the contents retained in the USB drive can be opened. That's 4 movies. The name and screen are all blurred by the platform, just like Sun Tzu's Art of War, which is the platform's protection of information ownership. But even so, it has completely excited collectors. Surprisingly preserved so completely. Just now, Sun Tzu's military strategy, he also expressed this kind of lament. It can be imagined that completeness is of great value to this cultural antique. Respected guest. The collector looked at Shen Shi again, completely unable to conceal his desire. May I ask which 4 movies are recorded on this? Iron Man 1 and 2, as well as Embroidered Spring Knife 1 and 2, Shen Shi truthfully informed. After the words fell, it was obvious that the halo that surged in the collector's mind suddenly came to a halt. This is an exceptionally strange scene. Completely inconsistent with the laws of optics, like some kind of cool special effects. But in Shen Shi's feeling, it was more like a prelude to a volcanic eruption. He even has the urge to take a few steps back. But before he made any action, the scorching emotions erupted first. The azure light fills all eyes. That is an indescribable sense of oppression. The collector in front of us seems to be transformed into light, like the infinite quantum body of Dr. Manhattan. Just looking directly at it can bring spiritual trembling, as if there are raging emotions rolling in. It is an uncontrollable joy, a trembling passion all over, and a pleasure from the soul. Alert! Alert! Your consciousness is under attack. Just as Shen Shi was about to immerse himself in this crazy surge of emotions, the crimson triangle and piercing buzzing kept appearing, suppressing all the emotions he had just experienced. The shock in Shen Shi's heart cannot be described in words. If the anonymous rainbow light is removed, one can see him panting heavily. What was that just now? Isn't this virtual reality? And that azure light, what exactly is it? Isn't it a special effect? How could he still attack his consciousness? Just as Shen Shi was considering whether to retreat, the alarm suddenly stopped. In front of me is still a collector, and it seems to have returned to normal. I am deeply sorry, respected guest. Please forgive my impoliteness. The collector lowered his head, even stroked his chest with one hand, bent down 90 degrees, and his tone was filled with regret. I was too excited to control my emotions and strength. Please forgive me, and for this, I am willing to offer you satisfactory compensation. At the same time, in front of Shen Shi, there were also prompts from the platform. You have been attacked by the collector, without malicious intent. The other party requests forgiveness. If they do not agree, their reputation score will be deducted. Note, if the reputation score is too low, they will lose their store qualification. At this moment, Shen Shi had not yet recovered. Whether it's what just happened or the platform prompts in front of us, there is a considerable amount of information. So much so that his thinking is still a bit messy. I don't know how to speak. Silence is the response he can give at this moment. After a long silence, the collector still maintained a bowing posture, his heart filled with regret. Bite your teeth. Respected sir. The slightly changed translation seems to reflect a change. I am willing to compensate you for 13 tons of simulated deformation material free of charge, in order to seek your forgiveness. I hope that my small impoliteness will not affect your future transactions with me. 13 tons of simulated deformable material. Upon hearing this compensation, Shen Shi finally regained his senses. I looked deeply at the collector in front of me. Putting aside those things that are currently incomprehensible, the current situation is easy to understand. The reason why collectors set their posture so low is probably not because they are worried about the so-called credit score, but because they are worried about the unfinished USB transaction. After a moment of hesitation, Shen Shi slowly said, "Let's not do it again." No matter what the attack was just now, it woke him up. Even here, it is not absolutely safe. He needs to be more cautious. But 13 tons of simulated deformable material. The 25 tons he just traded at home now have 38 tons in his hands. If used well, in modern society, there is almost no solution. After confirming the compensation was received, Shen Shi also chose to agree to forgiveness at the prompt, and it was not until then that the collector lifted his body again. "Thank you for your forgiveness," he seemed to have breathed a sigh of relief. Shen Shi noticed that collectors seemed to no longer hide their emotions in front of him, and the azure light did indeed have a role in conveying emotions. He already has some understanding of what it feels like for ancient people to suddenly transition to modern times. Too many unknowns, too many mysteries. Many places simply cannot be guessed and understood using their past logic. So Shen Shi is still playing the role of a silent character. The collector only thought he was still dissatisfied with what happened just now. Please understand. He still maintained a slightly bent posture, feeling helpless and regretful. It's really the treasure you brought out, it's amazing. End of this chapter. Chapter 8, Noble Sir. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8, Noble Sir. Shen Shi still remained silent. To be honest, he also had an indescribable shock. The value of modern information is truly astonishing in the future 3,000 years from now. Even if the antique collector in front of them has a stronger love for antiques, it is a bit exaggerated at this point. The collector still hasn't stopped talking. That is one of the most famous movies in the short history of the Earth Age. It showcases the ancestors' yearning for technology and the universe during the Earth Age. I once had the privilege of witnessing fragments, and I couldn't help but be deeply shocked by the ancestors' amazing imagination. The emotions he conveyed turned into deep intoxication. Although I have never seen the embroidered spring knife, I have heard of it. It is a story played by our ancestors that is even farther away than the end of the Earth Age. Every frame and every sentence in it are priceless treasures to humanity. Shen Shi still finds it difficult to understand. He felt that this fanaticism had surpassed modern people's pursuit of antiques. Is history really so important? Is the significance of the time diamond spanning 3,000 years just for the sake of history? But no matter what. The greater the value of history, the more advantageous it is for him. Let's talk about trading. Shen Shi turned the topic back to trading. Is there really no better one? Dear sir, the collector seems to be in a difficult position. You should know our current situation. If it were in the past, there may have been opportunities, but now, within the rancher's sphere of influence, no civilization dares to sell immigrant warships to us. Shen Yi did not respond. A rancher? What is the current situation? There is too much unknown information in this sentence, and a slight carelessness in the answer will expose his ignorance of the future. His silence seemed to be mistaken by collectors for some form of dissatisfaction. The collector glanced at the silver USB flash drive again and gritted his teeth at the 4 movies projected. "Dear sir, are you planning to escape? Then I will also attach an independent information database so that you and your clan can develop rapidly in any star domain. This is already my greatest sincerity. At least here, no one can offer a more valuable transaction than me." Escape? An independent information repository? Shen Shi pondered the profound meaning behind these 2 words. However, looking at the collector's appearance, he also knows that he may not be able to ask for more things. Actually, he doesn't want to say anything more. If it weren't for the sake of avoiding exposure and continuing to trade in the future, let alone 4 or 40 movies for this battleship, he would have traded them all. "Okay, let's trade." Still a brief response. Now, collectors are once again in a state of joy. Fortunately, this time he did not shine like before, but completed the transaction as quickly as possible, and then couldn't help but lift the platform's restrictions. The names and content of those 4 movies were completely unlocked. And Shen Shi. Looking at the huge, black ball in my personal space, I feel a bit dazed. Did you really get it? A space battleship with a diameter of over 1 kilometer. Dear sir, may I know if there is anything else I can do for you? The collector seems to have confirmed the authenticity and completeness of the movie, and in the face of Shen Shi's increasing respect, it is not only reflected in the translation, but also in the actions. He still maintains a semi-bent posture. Shen Shi originally planned to leave here immediately, but at this moment, he hesitated slightly. He still left a sentence, "In the future, maybe there will be a time to find you." "No problem." The collector bowed elegantly again with increasing joy. "It is a great honor for me to trade with you, a distinguished gentleman from the Yuan clan. Every social item you bring is an unparalleled treasure. Every ancient saying you say is a great gift to me." Shen Shi gave him a deep glance. He actually realized it long ago. Although the platform will provide simultaneous translation and anonymity will hide the tone in the speech, the language he uses cannot be concealed. For people of this era, Dongwu language can definitely be considered an ancient language. The evidence is the rows of asterisk in the battleship description. Shen Shi naturally understood that those asterisks did not mean that the Dongwu characters could not be explained, but rather that there were no corresponding vocabulary, which was enough to indicate that his mother tongue would not be spoken by many people in the future. This is also the reason why collectors refer to them as VIPs for their first transaction. Looking at the collector's attitude towards another customer, one can tell that the respect he shows towards himself is definitely justified. Although he didn't understand what the collector had added to his mind and what Yuan clan meant, Shen Shi naturally wouldn't ask. Because of this misunderstanding, it benefits him. The anonymous halo of colorful colors concealed all of Shen Shi's emotions and actions. In the eyes of collectors, he just briefly remained silent before turning around and leaving the store. Then exit the trading market. Consciousness returns to the body once again. The first thing that strikes is the strong sense of unreality brought about by environmental changes. Then the subconscious reaction is to check the items in one's personal space. That huge ball, still suspended in good condition, including a pile of wriggling black liquid. It's true. He really exchanged a book he bought for a few tens of yuan and a USB drive he bought for 100 yuan for a bunch of universal materials, as well as a spaceship that can accommodate tens of thousands of people. No way. Don't get too excited. Shen Shi's face turned red and he clenched his fist tightly, using all his strength to control his urge to shout. No matter how calm you are usually, it's only when you encounter big things that you realize how difficult it is to control your emotions. Then, gently lift your hand. A large black, viscous, oil-like black liquid appeared on the floor of the room. Slowly wriggling. It's precisely the simulation of deformable materials. Shen Shi did not take out too much, only took out 100 kilograms, but in standby mode, it was enough to lay flat on the floor of the entire room. The manipulation of this simulated deformable material is achieved through its program installed on a personal terminal. The so-called personal terminal, like modern phones and computers, is a necessary and versatile tool in the future world. Contains various forms. There are external light brains on the body, chips implanted inside the body, and terminals located in special spaces that are controlled through consciousness. Even spaceships can be controlled remotely through personal terminals with consciousness. It is obvious that the black market trading terminal that came to Shen Shi's side with Shi Ling is a personal terminal, and it is a very advanced type that has been bound to him. End of this chapter. Chapter 9, You can make money by stretching out your hand. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9, You can make money by stretching out your hand. Apart from something completely incomprehensible like Shi Ling, this terminal is just a tool that everyone in the market has. Shen Shi was sure from the beginning that there was an option to unbind it. So he is not very worried about any traps in this thing, and he plans to switch to a different terminal when there is a chance in the future. But at this moment, he has already installed the control system for simulating deformed materials. This is a wonderful feeling. With just a thought, the black liquid lying flat on the ground flowed slowly towards him, like life, wrapping around his body from his legs, bringing a cold touch. In the next moment, he suddenly broke away and with a swoop in front of him, transformed into a golden pillar of brilliant golden light. Shen Shi grinned and his smile was equally brilliant. My first reaction was to turn gold, it's a bit vulgar. But he's just a layman. Shen Shi has a clear understanding of himself. He yearns for power, status, and money, enjoys vanity, enjoys public attention, is unwilling to be ordinary, likes beauty, and has agreed for most of the beautiful things in the world. Even if his efforts are praised by people around him, they are essentially just the pursuit of desire. And now, everything he once longed for seems to be within reach. At this moment, there was no one else, and the crisis 3 years later seemed to have a way out. Shen Shi breathed a deep sigh of relief and no longer suppressed himself. However, this complex emotion, mixed with freshness, excitement, anticipation, as well as worry, regret, hesitation, and so on, appeared for the first time in his more than 2 decades of life. With the stirring of emotions, the deformable material in front of us also begins to constantly change. The sofa, wardrobe, tablet, computer, cat and dog, and even in the end, turned into a Gatling with a long elastic chain. It can be shot. Although there is no energy conversion during the transformation process of elements and forms, as long as it is set up, it can still participate in chemical reactions. Of course, the energy consumed in this process needs to be absorbed externally. That is to say, as long as the principle is mastered and enough energy is absorbed, even nuclear weapons can be simulated. It's like magic, Shen Shi exclaimed. According to the accompanying usage instructions, this simulated deformable material already has military applications. In modern society, it is like driving an armed helicopter to ancient times, and it is not just a living immortal. If we add a spaceship. Shen Shi had already begun to realize that in just a few minutes, the power he had mastered had surpassed everyone on this planet. This is not even related to status, power, or wealth. But a more advanced, purer, and powerful force. This feeling is so wonderful that all imagination about it is so powerless in front of the real existence of it. Only with true possession can one truly understand this dreamy feeling. It can be said. If it weren't for the disaster 3 years later hanging over his head, Shen Shi at this moment would have been drifting but unaware of what was happening. But it is precisely because he is aware of the disaster that he is trying his best to restrain this inflated emotion. There is also a desire to share. It would be great to have a trustworthy life mentor at this time. Shen Shi suddenly felt a desire to share. Even if it's just a sincere friend. even if it doesn't reveal the true situation. He took out his phone, scrolled through his contacts, trying to find a friend who could share his emotions at this time. However, there was none. Shen Shi has many friends, but he really doesn't have any friends who can vent his emotions. Actually, my father can do it too. Unfortunately, his father died 6 years ago as a hero. Finally, he saw a person's name. Aixiner. A person who makes him feel a bit dazed. When people are proud of the scenery, it is indeed easy to remember the white moonlight they once longed for, Shen Shi said with a complex expression. The last chat was a few months ago when the other party asked if they wanted to go to school together in Haicheng, but he refused, citing some other matters. As for why? Emotions with significant differences in hierarchy have a high probability of being defeated by reality, and he is unwilling to face them humbly, so the only way is to stay away. However, it seems different now. Shen Shi didn't know how he was feeling at the moment. Everything that happened in this short period of time was beyond imagination, making people feel dizzy, but it didn't matter anymore. He had already dialed out. Just a short sound and it was immediately connected. Hello. A soft voice came from the phone. Are you available? I think I need some help, Shen Shi said straightforwardly. At the moment he heard the other person's voice, he suddenly found himself calmed down. It's like finally returning to the familiar realm from the unreal and unreal world. This made him realize. Perhaps I need an anchor, one that can help him, who has already changed too quickly, not lose himself. What happened? The voice on the phone seemed to be a bit anxious. In fact, Shen Shi deliberately lengthened his voice until the breathing on the other end of the phone became a bit urgent, before seriously saying, I got rich, overnight, billions of dollars, so I'm very confused now. Let's come out and talk about it. Doodle doodle. The phone was hung up directly. Shen Shi was a bit confused. But the information came quickly. Are you teasing me now? Angry. JPG. Shen Shi scratched his head. Don't believe it. No wonder he wouldn't believe it if someone told him that. Come out and meet me, I'm serious, Shen Shi tapped his phone with a crackling sound. There is a class in the afternoon, let's go to your store at 8 p.m. The reply was also quick. Okay. Shen Shi finished his sentence, put down his phone, and then lay whole in bed. Transforming material transformed into dozens of cats, gently leaning against his side. After a long time, Shen Shi extended his palm and looked at the brilliant galaxy slowly emerging on the back of his hand. The corner of the mouth involuntarily grinned open. Not the kind of laughter that was based on excitement, desire, and power just now. But a smile that is truly based on reality. No matter what the future holds, from this day on, my fate will no longer be ordinary, Shen Shi said to himself. He suddenly got up from the bed, and the cats scattered around and gathered together, forming a cube. The cowhide has already been blown out, and there are only a few hours left until the date. Anyway, let's start by making money. The life goal of the vast majority of people is really simple for him at this moment. In the simulation of the gifted deformation model of deformable materials alone, there is a commonly used weapon for information warfare. With the network level of Blue Star, a supercomputer composed of deformable materials can be completely controlled in just a few seconds. He didn't mean to invade the bank or anything. As long as you play with a few virtual currency wallets, making money is not just a matter of reaching out. End of this chapter. Chapter 10, Power Beyond Everything. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10, Power Beyond Everything. So, an hour later, Shen Shi stared at the numbers in his bank card in a daze. 324,806,456 yuan. A total of 320 million. Although he knew it was easy to make money now, even Shen Shi did not expect it to be so easy. Most of this hour was spent on the payer's transfer. The remaining parts, he only needs to give commands to artificial intelligence and solve them directly, effortlessly, and without any difficulty. So, I've become a billionaire now? Shen Shi muttered to himself. However, he realized that he was not as excited as he had imagined. Because compared to the more magical superpowers, compared to the trading market, compared to the spaceship, it seems that having so much money is not much. Despite being a struggling youth with a lifelong goal of millions the day before, today he has already realized that money is a number. He himself does not know how to cope with this change with what kind of mood. It's just that he can now shop happily and painfully. Buying the most expensive luxury car. Buying the most expensive watch. Buying the most expensive clothes. It doesn't matter if someone says you're getting rich suddenly. I'm just getting rich suddenly. Shen Shi changed his clothes and hummed a self-written and self-directed tune as he went out. He even had a feeling of Spider-Man being possessed and blackened by venom, as if the whole world was playing DJs and walking was like dancing. Don't care about the opinions of others, don't care about anyone's opinion. On this planet, one's own will is a power that surpasses everything. Taking a taxi, he drove straight towards the Rolls-Royce Experience Center in Haicheng. After sitting in the car, Shen Shi suddenly fell silent, ignoring even a few teasing words from the driver. Along the way, he only immersed half of his consciousness in personal space, while the other half watched the traffic coming and going outside the window. The transformed material coins kept rolling between his fingers. He is remembering this moment in his own way. This state persisted until standing in front of the experience hall. The reason why he came here for the first stop is because it's not his first time here. Once when the road passed by, I saw it once. Whether it was the exquisite decoration or the vehicles seen through the glass, it gave him a mixture of melancholy longing at that time. I yearn for luxury in another world, but also feel frustrated by my own ordinariness. But now, he was wearing a t-shirt worth a few hundred yuan, holding his head high and chest upright. He pushed open the tightly closed single door and walked in. Before the salesperson could approach, he pointed to a black-painted Rolls-Royce Phantom parked in the lobby. I'll take this car, full payment, drive away immediately. The salesperson who was just about to come over was stunned for a moment. Even the expression has changed. Shen Shi didn't know what she was thinking, perhaps doubting whether she had the ability. However, it doesn't matter. He doesn't need to care about the other person's thoughts or the so-called car buying process. He just needs to know that he has a crush on this car and wants to drive away immediately. It's that simple. Sir, thank you for your love and support. The salesperson finally walked up to Shen Shi and looked at him with some caution. But our exterior paint and interior can be customized, and you have many other options. Do you need them? No, I'm in a hurry. Shen Shi had already taken out his bank card. Just ask if it's possible to withdraw it. If it's possible, then make the payment. The expression of this salesperson with exquisite makeup has once again changed. Especially when she looked at this bank card that was no different from her own. But then she saw Shen Shi's expression. Calm, confident, and indifferent. It's not crazy, it's just really rich. If you're sure, of course not a problem. The salesperson exclaimed and welcomed Shen Shi into the VIP room. The next step is to sign the contract, make payment, and complete the procedures. When Shen Shi transferred 1.02 million yuan from that ordinary card, not to mention the salesperson in front of him, the employees in the entire experience hall were a bit agitated. Usually, it's not like ordinary people pretending to want to buy, asking questions and even getting in the car to experience it. But this is still the first time like this situation in front of us. Rich people are really getting better at playing. Wearing clothes worth a few hundred yuan, buying a car worth millions of yuan, not even needing customized services or a car pickup ceremony, it's like buying a few yuan toy casually. But now Shen Shi doesn't care what others think. His gaze was only on his own car. To be honest, the black exterior paint is not his favorite. It's too calm, he prefers blue. But so what? Shen Shi is very clear that he is currently venting. Release the mundane past while experiencing the extraordinary present more deeply. This growth and change is undoubtedly rapid. As he sat on the leather seat, touched the delicate steering wheel, and looked up at the roof, he could also say in a nonchalant tone, "This is what others call the starry sky roof, ultimate luxury. It's not that beautiful either." The salesperson standing outside the car gave a dry laugh and dared not say anything. "How long will it take to complete the procedures?" Shen Shi asked. "At most 2 hours," the salesperson quickly said. "Then give me a temporary card first, fill it up with oil, and I'll go out for a walk." "No problem, right?" Shen Shi looked at her. After hesitating for a moment, the salesperson nodded repeatedly. There are many types of power in a person. When Shen Shi has already demonstrated one of them, many troublesome things will become less troublesome. Next, he was like a nouveau riche. Driving millions of luxury cars to go crazy shopping. Brand-name sunglasses, brand-name suits, luxury watches, high-end computers. An afternoon passed, and the newly bought luxury car was packed with things, and Shen Shi had also been completely refreshed from beginning to end. Most people who meet him will involuntarily be attracted by his temperament. Men will envy him, women will yearn for him, and service personnel will be respectful and polite. He sat alone in the Western restaurant, enjoying steak and red wine, feeling the faint gaze of those around him. Perhaps it was looking at his branded clothes and watch, or perhaps it was looking at his rude and ceremonial way of dining. But it's still that sentence. Shen Shi, who possesses power, doesn't need to care about the gaze of others. No wonder people say it's difficult to go from luxury to frugality. Shen Shi looked at the red wine in his glass and swallowed it like a drink, wiping his mouth. Buy whatever you want, have whatever you want. This kind of happiness seems to have turned the whole world into heaven, but unfortunately, this kind of good day only has 3 years left. End of this chapter.